started sitting around the rest of the year, started getting bored. Fixing cars has almost nothing to do with it anymore. It's 100% about people management. If you can't first dream of it, you're never going to be able to do it. Leadership starts with self-leadership. Don't even start messing with leadership if that's who you want to be. Understand what extreme ownership is. We were absolutely killing it.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of the Lift Your Shop podcast. I'm Kelsey Osham with Lift Autocare Marketing, and today we have another great guest. We have Eric Raber from ER Autocare, 4 amazing locations in the Northwest Columbus, Ohio area. So, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so we're really excited to getting to know you, and obviously, like, growing locations is always a interesting topic for most. They're like, how do I get to that next step? And so we're definitely going to be hitting on kind of your journey here, but to start at the beginning, kind of how did you get started in the auto repair industry?
Yeah, my dad started the business back in 2007. We came in off of a totally different business in the agriculture industry, and it had started becoming a bit obsolete and had an opportunity to move into the Columbus area and take care of a couple of handicapped kids. And Dad had a farm shop that he had access to do whatever he wanted to. So with the previous business, we had a lot of mechanical experience fixing machinery and all that kind of stuff. So it was just kind of a natural thing to start gravitating into fixing cars, farm machinery, you name it. So that was July of 2007. He started that. I started working for a local trucking company. Was the typical teenage kid. Honestly, I don't understand why the trucking company even allowed me to work on trucks. I was 17. If I was in their shoes, I wouldn't let the average 17-year-old work on my stuff. So anyway, they must have more faith in me than I did. But whatever, it worked. So did that, got fired from that job, and went to work for a local Ford dealership. Once again, 17 years old, working in a Ford dealer, like, it's pretty odd, especially looking back in like 2007, 2008, like getting into a dealership back then was tough.
Mm-hmm.
The technician market was totally different than what it is now. So I had to poke and prod to get in. Managed to leave a couple of wheels loose on a car because I didn't understand the right strategy for it. And obviously ended up getting fired from that. So then we're rolling into about March of 2008. And the shop was starting to take off for Dad, but it wasn't anything great yet. So I worked in it for a couple months and ended up doing some construction work in the concrete industry for a couple months. Then throughout the summer, things took off pretty well. Then I bought into it 50-50 with my dad and jumped into it full time. So helped that he had a part-time income from the farm that we were on. So went a long way in getting things rolling. So didn't have a clue about marketing. Communication skills were awful. I'm really glad we didn't record phone calls from that era because I probably would crawl out of my skin if I'd know how I sounded on them. So anyways, now it's like, here, follow this process and you'll be fine. And like, smile when you're on the phone and all the other things. So ran it 50-50, just me and Dad and a bookkeeper through what was it, 2012. In the meantime, my younger brother Brent had come in and worked evenings, a little bit on the weekends, and then through the summer, and ended up gravitating towards the front and liking to work with customers and the people side of things and all that. Some of it, looking back, once again, it's like, this is really, really sad that we did it this way, but people would bring their car in. They'd say, hey, we have XYZ problem. They'd drop their car off and we'd fix it. And then they would come in afternoons to pick up their car and Brent would be there and they'd be like, okay, so what did you do to my car? And I was like, I don't know. So anyways, it's pretty rough and tumble. So we weren't doing anything dishonest. It was like you said you needed your car fixed, and we fixed it. So anyway, we learned later on that there's some extra steps that you need to get into. So, but yeah, then 2012, the gig with the farm kind of came to an end. and we jumped out and got us a better location. I failed to mention the farm shop was literally a half mile off the road. There's
Mhm.
people who were like, I wonder who these guys are. I wouldn't mind going there, but I ain't driving a half mile back there to find out. So our second location that we moved it to was on the road, a proper commercial building.
Mhm.
It wasn't the greatest thing in the world, had like 12-foot ceilings, so managed to jam some lifts in there and made it work. So did that. I got annoyed that I was making less owning part of my own business than a lot of the dealership technicians were. So I started poking around with some different coaching companies. I had one reach out to me, and they're like, "Yeah, you're leaving 100 grand a year on the table." It's like, okay, and this kind of short circuited Dad's brain. He's like, he didn't even think you could make 100 grand a year,
Mhm.
much less make an additional 100 grand a year. So, anyways, I started talking about expanding the business, and he didn't really want a whole lot to do with it. I ended up buying out an additional 25% of it. So it was a 75-25.
Mhm.
The 50-50 partnership was not a great one.
Mhm.
Um, we how is it, me and Dad are the same person, but we think totally differently,
Gotcha.
so that can create all kinds of issues. So I bought the controlling share of it just so that somebody had to say so. Because then when you're in a 50-50 with your dad, usually it's actually your dad only owns 50%, but he has the voting majority, so which is fine. But yeah, word of caution if you're gonna do a 50-50.
Yeah.
So anyways, started working with, or ended up working with about, so what was it, three? Yeah, three different coaching groups until I found a third one,
Mhm.
and actually ended up working out well. Learned a lot of stuff. Learned how to market for my location. So we on our farm shop, we did about 400 grand a year. We doubled it to about 800 grand a year just by default without really doing marketing that amounted to diddly. And, but the traffic counts on the road were like 1,500 cars a day.
Yeah.
Like, it's bad. It's slow enough that they chip and seal the road through the summer. They don't, it's rare that they actually repave the road.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, that's the kind of thing we were dealing with. So figured out how to do direct mail and started to get the thing to grow and totally maxed out direct mail. The rent on the store was ridiculously cheap. I think before we moved out of that location, my rent budget was less than 2% of sales, and my marketing budget was like close to 8. But when you have a weak location, you just pay for it in marketing. You can do it. Wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend it. Always prefer a strong location over a weak one.
Uh-huh.
But if you're in a weak one, go figure out a way to do it. Like, it can be done. So rolling into 2018, started figuring out how to do some of the multi-location stuff and started poking Dad about it. And he was like, "Hey, I don't want anything to do with this." So I bought out the rest of the business from him, and I think I ended up swapping a some real estate equity. Me and Dad had a couple of rental properties we owned together. So I traded my half of the rental properties for his quarter of the shops
Okay.
and didn't exchange any cash or anything like that. So it was a kind of cool way to get out of it. So but anyway, he stayed on as a technician and still works for us today. Is one of our top 3 hour producers. So everybody's happier. He makes way more money as a tech than he ever did as an owner, and doesn't have to deal with all the headaches of paperwork, leading people, management, all that crazy stuff that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. So.
Awesome.
But yeah, so that was 2018. So by the end of 2019, I was starting to get kind of bored, which when you're bored is always a very, very dangerous position
Dangerous.
as an
Yep.
auto repair shop owner. Like they say, you're probably making the most money when you're the most bored. So I was instructed to go get a hobby and go do something else for a while. So did that. Obviously, we roll into March of 2020 and all heck breaks loose. So it was a very, very sad March. But as everyone else knows, about April, everything started taking off. And I think we ramped up, and that store, our record month in July was 256,000. This is a store that when I started with the coaching company, like if we did 75 grand, we were absolutely killing it.
Yeah.
Now, that 256,000 didn't last very long because then the market started normalizing a little bit.
Mhm.
Like, talk about creating some nasty cash flow waves. Like you have all that cash coming in, but then all the bills come in.
Yeah.
About sucks your all the money back out of the system if you can't sustain it. So
Mhm.
we the last 2 years in that facility, we did back-to-back years of 2.2 million. So I was very proud of the fact that we had done it out of that crappy of a location. There's worse out there, but you have to be really, really dumb to go pick a worse location. So yeah. Anyway, so that was August of 2020. Coach told me to go take a month off because we were starting to talk about multi-location.
Yep.
And if you take off for an entire month, don't do anything with your stores, you're going to figure out pretty quickly what breaks and what doesn't.
Mhm.
So everything checked out pretty well. By then, I had my brother Brent managing the store full time. He knows how to lead people and make things happen. So it's pretty cool. I made more money on the month I took off than most of the months that I was in the store.
Yeah.
So that was nice. So I started looking for another store. After poking around, we found a pretty good location on a road with 25,000 cars a day in town, and signed the lease on it like the middle of December of 2020. And earlier in the, I think it was about November, I started poking my landlord about my store one lease that was coming due at the end of the year. And he was dragging his feet, lollygagging, and I was kind of annoyed at it. I was like, all right, whatever. The building we were in, I had no reason to believe he was going to go lease it to anyone else.
Mhm.
But so I kind of left it go, didn't really think about it. So we get into rehabbing the store because I had plenty of time, so I ended up doing a decent amount of work on it, which is fine, but don't know that I'd necessarily recommend it, but whatever. So I get into the middle of January, we're up to our eyeballs in a rehab, and the landlord's like, "Hey, dude, I'll give you till the end of 2021, but I need you out of the store by the end of the year."
Oh,
I
jeez.
was like, "Oh crap."
Yeah.
So it's the store one's in a smaller market, and zoning is tough. Learned long after the fact that a local real estate developer told me that Central Ohio zoning laws are some of the toughest in the country to deal with.
Mm.
So getting them to let you run an auto repair shop in town where you need to be is kind of tough. So after spending more money than I care to think about, and as well as time, we trying to chase down building a brand new shop because there was only one other facility in town that would have worked. After a pretty nasty zoning meeting of the land or of the local tenant or residents, basically acting like I was going to run some kind of nasty factory in their backyard, ended up getting the plug pulled on that project. So, um, yeah, chased all that down. So then to sync up the timelines, we opened up store two in March of 21,
Mhm.
and that one put that one off to the races. It went decently well, and managed to open up the store at about what was it 95,000 if I remember right.
Mhm.
So I was pleased with that for an opening month.
Yep.
So and then promptly turned around and went full bore into like, okay, how do I relocate store one? So you have no idea what you're going to be able to do. I wasn't looking for other stuff.
Yeah.
So we pushed doing a build into about July till that blew up. So now I'm looking down the pipe at crap. Like, I know the landlord, I can go push his buttons. I'll stay there as long as I need to, but I've actually only got a couple months past the end of the year to do this.
Yeah.
So, um, after all that, marched into the only other auto repair shop in town that was anywhere close to big enough to hold my operation. And I was like, "Hey, dude, you want to sell?" And he was like, "Hey, yeah, I've been kind of thinking about it." And so, yeah, started some conversations with that. That took about 2 months till we got a basic deal hammered out, and then had to do SBA financing on it. And anybody who's done that knows that their high speed is our snail's pace. So, anyway, I, after dragging the whole thing out, having to do a phase two environmental, got the whole thing done and closed it in January of 2022. We were going to take our jolly good time and move out of our existing or our first store over like a 1 month period. And all of a sudden we started seeing this is just going to be a pain in the butt. So we decided the heck with it all. And I think we closed up shop on a Thursday night and moved the whole thing that weekend and started doing a bunch of rehab work. We jammed 4 advisors and a manager into a little, oh, what was it, about a 15 by 25 office and made crap fly.
Yeah.
So took about 6 weeks to do the rehab after we moved in. It wasn't any fun, but we made it all happen. So so yeah, then started sitting around the rest of the year, started getting bored, and I had this shop on my vision board for another location for like years already. So I was like, all right, I think we're in a spot where we can go get a third one. So I go stick my nose into this potential store, and the owner wasn't present. Learned later he had 4 or 5 other mina keys.
Oh wow.
And he had, anyways, so the manager's like, there's no way he's going to sell. So we're like, all right, whatever. He said he'd pass all our info on to the owner.
Mhm.
Of course, never did.
Yep.
So we're like, how do we find this guy? So we went poking around, couldn't find Jack Diddley. So finally, we're like, all right. So I had my attorney send the owner's attorney a letter and be like, hey, dude, like, here's a deal. Like, I have somebody who might want to do a deal with you. You should look at this. So that got the owner to actually give us a call. And then he was like, yeah, I don't want to sell this store, but I've got this other one that's been empty for for a year or so north of town that I need to sell. So I got to thinking, and it's a B location, 10,000 cars a day in a high population area. So it ends up working out pretty nicely. So I was like, all right, we can market this. And I was like, if I'm going to take on a weak location, I'd rather not go lock up a bunch of cash in it and then not be able to move to a fourth one. So got to thinking about it and was like, hey, dude, like, sell me property or the property north of town and the sawmill location that I actually want.
Yep.
And get me a lease on the sawmill location and we'll do us a deal. So took some little bit of back and forth, but ended up getting it all done. Took over the third one in what was it, November of 22. I signed a lease and a purchase agreement on the Polaris store and a lease on the sawmill store with a delayed takeover, all while I was on the way back from my honeymoon.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit nuts, but anyways, that created way more stress than it needed to, but so be it.
That is amazing. I mean, you had so much going on your honeymoon. I'm sure your wife was very ecstatic about on your business transactions that you're taking care of.
So, fortunately, on that, with Brent acting as COO now, he ended up dealing with a lot of the negotiations and stuff like that. He loves himself a good real estate deal, so he ended up having real reason to be involved in it too. Though him and Brent and Dad ended up buying the real estate for store 3, and then I just lease it from him. So let
Oh,
me put
okay.
out a lot less cash than I would have had to otherwise, allow me to put it into the rehab work and all that. So,
Very interesting. So how big is each store are we looking at here?
so
Like bays
store,
and lifts and people.
yeah,
Let's start diving into it.
yeah, store one. I'm not at anywhere close to capacity. It's currently at I think it's a 12 lifts,
Mhm.
and I think I can get 15 into it once I'm maxed out. Straight up have a high market penetration rate on the area. So there's a bunch of new houses coming. So it's got the long-term ability to max out, but it's going to take a little bit of time yet. Store two is a little 5 bay, four techs, alignment rack. Need to get a fifth tech in there, but we'll get it. And then number three is a 7 bay and with a ton of room to expand. And then uh, number four is a 7 bay as well, but it's on a pretty tight lot. So that one's a really nice location, 30,000 cars a day, tons of visibility. So can't make it any better. Has bay doors facing the road. It's like this is like textbook auto repair real
Yeah,
estate. So
that's amazing. If you don't mind sharing across the four stores for last year, what was like the kind of the revenue that you're looking at?
yeah, revenue. Where did we come in at? It's somewhere between around 5.5 mil.
That's amazing.
So yeah,
So so obviously this is not an overnight success as as we've heard through the story. There was a lot of back and forth, ups and downs, a lot of learning through the
yep.
process. And so what would you say is like one of the crucial elements that you believe allowed yourself to kind of create more shops?
So one of the biggest things, the core biggest thing is personal development. No two ways about it.
Yep.
And as a subset of that, it's leadership. Um, I think it was 2012. My brother told me, is like, hey, dude, you need to go take a Dale Carnegie class. I
Mm,
had no clue. I had an idea of
yeah.
what I was getting into. I was scared spitless of public speaking. Like, do not put me in front of a group of 30 people and have me talk. Well, I get into it and it's like, oh yeah, half of the Dale Carnegie class revolves around doing public speaking. So I learned a ton through that. Um, and he obviously wrote the book, How to Win Friends, Influence People, and then How to Stop Worrying How to Start Living and Stop Worrying.
Mhm.
So learned a lot through that. Before then, my PR skills were absolutely terrible. I was never given the tools to work with people. It was always just get grumpy with someone when they did something wrong, go yell at them, and off you go. So that was the first thing that kind of shifted my paradigm. Then after that, after I started working with my current coaching group, learned a lot about leadership. Um, Picked up a couple of really good books. Extreme Ownership being one of my all-time favorites.
There.
It's no offense to John Maxwell. He teaches a lot of really good stuff, but I'm sorry, under the gun, I can't remember the 22 different laws of leadership, plus all the other books. So fantastic stuff. Excellent author. Obviously sells a ton of books, but yeah, I've kind of learned that if you go to situations where people die, if you don't know how to lead, like you're going to learn what is actually at the essence of what leadership is.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's been one of the key things I've learned there. Another book is Leadership and Self-Deception I believe it was written by the Arbinger Institute. Um, that's not near as popular of a book, but that starts dealing with the concept of self-leadership,
Mm.
which all leadership starts with self-leadership. If you can't show up on time. Like I noticed that you sent me like a ton of text messages, email reminders, and all that. It's like, okay, that's cool. I found them kind of annoying. Everybody has a smartphone with a calendar in it. Go set yourself reminders for it and be done with it. No need for all this extra communication.
Yeah.
So, but I understand why you're doing it because, yeah, a lot of people don't do this.
Yeah. For sure.
And then, so yeah, there's a bunch of different details that go into that, but those are a couple of resources that I found that totally shifted my personal paradigm, and where I learned like, okay, here's some strategies that you can follow for leadership. And then so you turn around, and then once you get into four stores, it's long past, or sorry, once you get into four stores, fixing cars has almost nothing to do with it
Mhm.
anymore. It's 100% about people management. So you have to be able to have your store managers understand what extreme ownership is and then hold themselves accountable to it, or else you're going to be doing nothing but running around yelling at people and putting out fires. So we did run into a nasty situation with our third store. We moved an advisor that we thought would do a decent job of managing into managing the third store, and he managed to blow the thing all to bits. And unfortunately, that third store in March of this year, I believe, will probably actually hit break even. It's lost money every single month
Oh, wow.
because the manager just screwed everything up,
Mhm.
and the store lost momentum and then started attracting some bad employees. And it just, the whole thing goes to heck in a handbasket really quick.
Yeah.
But it all just happens slowly, one step at a time. So then it took some serious work to get the thing back on track. I actually ended up sitting in the store for almost a month, weeding out some employees that had to go and helping the manager get the thing back on track. So, yeah, it certainly wasn't roses. The stress levels were way higher than I care to think about, but fingers crossed, we're on the downhill side of it now. So.
Yeah, and so with your leadership style, so obviously, I mean, four stores, you can't be at every single one. Obviously, there's situations where you're like, you know what, I need to be there to get this fixed and humming along. Money is a good incentive in terms of like, I know this needs to be fixed. But like, do you have, say, weekly meetings with your store managers? Do you like don't do that? You have a different style. Like, what is your style in terms of how you go about making sure you're touching base on each location, understanding what's working, what's not?
Yeah, for sure. So we have some internal reports that we have managers fill out on a daily basis so that they look at their own numbers, so they can manage numbers by the day rather than, oh crap, we screwed up last week. Let's go fix this week. Well, we
Yeah.
don't want to blow an entire week apart
Mhm.
just because you didn't look at your numbers. So, excuse me. As far as manager meetings go, we have a corporate office at our store one, and we have the managers all come in every Monday, and we'll go over KPIs, see what problems they're having, um, help them through that, see what the wins were, um, review processes, see what's broken, so on and so forth.
Mm.
And then I haven't been very consistent with it. And then every couple of months, maybe quarterly, or at least every 6 months, we'll get the managers and their wives and go out for dinner just so everybody knows who everyone is. 'Cause obviously, managers go through a lot more stress than your average employee. So
Yeah.
having their spouse on your side goes a long way in
Nice.
keeping them from going looking for other jobs. So. But yeah, and then Brent is in stores different times throughout the month, kind of figure out which store needs some help, and then he'll go hang out for a couple days, week, whatever it takes, to make sure that store gets back on track. And then you can get a lot better feel of what's going on inside of a store. If I go pop in and out of a store for a couple hours, I have no idea what's actually going on inside of that store because everybody is like, "Oh, the boss is here. Follow the process. Be nice to customers. Yay, everything's cool." That's like you walk out. It's like, "Yeah, this shop's awesome." And then, yeah, manager meeting. It's like, "Oh, we had this happen. We had that happen." Or you get a text message about this. It's like, "What the crap? Like this thing looks like it's about to fall apart."
Uh,
So if you sit in there for 3, 4, 5 days, heck, even longer, do what you need to do. Everybody gets used to you being there and they start letting their guard down. Then you actually see what's going. So,
yeah. No, definitely, you hit on a little point there, where in terms of like you had your managers kind of review the numbers daily instead of say weekly, or maybe some people review it only at the end of the month, and then like Obviously, it takes a lot longer to make changes then. But at what point did you realize like that was crucial? And there's like we need them to do things every single day, regards to the numbers, and that's where you saw kind of the shift.
So that's something that I'd started learning back in was 2017. I had like a weekly KPI sheet that I filled out.
Yep.
And because of the situation, I could make the weekly situation work.
Mhm.
But when you start getting multi-location, you have to run it daily because if not, things are going to get out of hand really, really quick. It's pretty hard to go back and fix 4 stores all at the same time. Like, sorry, it just can't be done unless you have way too much management power, at which point in time you're not making money anyway. So, and then, yeah, we going from store one to store two wasn't too bad. We could still kind of basically do man coverage, if you will,
Oh.
and have it work out fine. And but after we jumped into the third one, and especially after we went to four, it's like, no, you can't do that anymore. Like you have to have people be on their numbers in the moment so that they can make changes as they go. So now, yeah, we can tell in the middle of the week, hey, this week's setting up to suck. Like, what's up? We had store two do that, and we started looking around. It's like, oh my stars, this advisor sounds like he's doing an absolutely crappy job. Brett listened to like 4 phone calls and about wanted to pull his eyeballs out. It's like this is so bad. If you want to do something uncomfortable, go listen to your staff's phone calls. Like it's insane what you will learn about what goes on when you're not there. And you can even do coaching on yourself. It's possibly one of the most uncomfortable things I've done in business, and I've done a lot of them. Then, if you want to have fun, go make your staff listen to their own phone calls, and you'll solve some problems pretty quick. So, which is actually what we did what is it, Tuesday, yesterday. And we had this advisor who screwed up car count for the entire last week. And he listened to the first half of one phone call and he's like, dude, I sound dead. So, yeah, all kinds of different tools you can use to help keep people on the right track using their own using feedback loops. So
Absolutely. I think it's a great point in terms of have your team listen to the recordings, have call recordings set up. I mean, some people don't even have that set up. You need to make sure you're able to even review said details in place. And so what are some of the numbers, some of those KPIs that like create the red flags that even allow you to initiate like, okay, we need to create some steps to like, now we need to listen to the calls because we need to take this a step forward to get it corrected. So what are some of the big ones that you're like, yep, we want to look on this, and this, and then we know the health of the shop.
Yep. So the first thing that usually happens is you're going to have people complaining about car count. I don't have enough cars. I don't have enough cars. Well, if you have a solid marketing plan, yeah, there's a possibility that something went wrong with your marketing plan. It does happen, but it's pretty rare if you're on your stuff. So early on, they go complain about cars. I go jump all over my marketing, do some desperation text messages and all that. They usually help move the needle a little bit, but never really solve the problem. So all of a sudden, I got smart through coaching and started looking at, okay, so what's actually going on? So there was a couple month period where I listened to every incoming phone call that the shop did. Very, very annoying to do. Took me an hour every day, but on a single location, you can do it, and learned a lot through it. And so now, if we have somebody, we'll watch car count, and if it starts going down, we're like, all right, what's up? Go listen to a couple phone calls, and you're going to figure it out really, really quick. There's some times where your market just straight up has a downturn, and there's nothing you're going to do about it other than, yeah, okay, so you can do some text message blasts, that type of thing, and it helps. But the bulk of the time that you've got an advisor or manager complaining about not having enough cars, and if it's legitimately a car count problem, then it's all in how they answer the phones. Usually they manage to say no in some kind of way or another. And sometimes it's really, really, really subtle. It's straight up body language and the tone that they use. Like they can follow the phone script. And it's if you answer the phone, hey, thanks for choosing ER Autocare. This is Eric. you're not gonna close those leads. It's just how it is. So
Yeah, and it's crazy how big a difference. Just like, I mean, I've heard like where people like you can hear when someone's smiling on the phone, and so just something
yeah,
simple like that. And one thing I mean, obviously I do quite a bit of podcasts. And one interesting thing I heard, and I don't know how many of you are still listening through all these different podcast episodes that we have, but someone said that they make their service advisors put notes around their monitor because obviously your phone is probably really close to that around the monitor, just like visual notes of reminding them to, hey, smile, hey, today is a great day, like just kind of positive reinforcement that they're able to read immediately when they look at the phone. I thought that was a really interesting, like super easy to do activity that you can just manually do. It takes a second to get a post-it note and slap a nice message on there. And if for the leaders, maybe it's something the leader can do, maybe it's something that nice they can write about the service advisor or something like that to just create that additional positive reinforcement now coming from someone else, not just themselves. So yeah, I think that's a great point in terms of that body language. And I mean, I'm glad that you're not putting all the blame at marketing. Obviously, I'm a little biased in this situation. Not that it's never our fault. Absolutely, we can be at fault for things as well. But I think, yeah, just understanding the process of where to look, and sounds like call recordings are kind of that go-to place where you're able to fix a lot.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So another thing, and this ties back to the leadership piece a bit, is how do you show up when you walk into a shop?
Mm.
Um, there's a situation a couple of years ago where I had to go into the shop. I felt like complete and total crap. And I walk into the shop and even say something about the fact, hey, I'm sorry, I'm feeling like crap today. And because of X, Y, and Z. And after the fact, Brett was like, dude, don't ever come in when you're feeling like that. It was like you just drain the energy out of the room.
Uh,
So once again, if your advisors aren't smiling and being happy when they're on the phone, take a look in the mirror and see, hey, did I show up with a completely crap attitude? Did I show up half hungover or whatnot a Monday morning and then expect my advisors to be all happy on the phone? So, but yeah,
yeah.
I can understand where you're coming from on the marketing side of it. That's kind of my baby, if you will. I've gone down a lot of rabbit holes with it already. It's yeah, a near and dear topic for me. So yeah, I tend to get up in arms pretty quick if somebody's like, "Oh, there's something wrong with your marketing plan. It's not working. It sucks." So it's like, "Oh no, buddy. Like, what's up?" So
I don't know. That could probably be a whole nother podcast.
yeah, for sure.
We can definitely chat about that. But in terms of leadership, that's kind of the main thing right now. What would you say are like, say, the top three ingredients of making a good leader in your eyes?
Ooh,
It's
top
definitely a tricky
three.
question. Or maybe you can just start. We can start with one, just like maybe the go-to thing where you're like, as you're looking for leaders for your team, as you create a location, you're like, yeah, I'm looking for that thing, and usually that thing can be defined by. Well, I don't want to lead your answer, so I'm not going to
Yeah,
give
yeah.
examples. So,
So one of the first things, and this really goes for anything, is you first off have to have a desire to be a good leader. Like
mm,
if it's something that's not even on your radar, like you just want to be the person who you are, you're going to be the classic auto repair shop operator that is 100 pounds overweight and has a bunch of BO and is generally unpleasant on the front counter. Like, cool. Like, don't even start messing with leadership if that's who you want to be.
yeah,
If that's who you want to be, that is absolutely fine. There's a group of people who you can serve that my stores can't. But if you actually want to grow as a leader, you have to first off desire it. And yeah, first off, you have to desire it. Ties back to the old or Think and Grow Rich book by Napoleon Hill. Like if you can't first dream of it, you're never going to be able to do it.
mm,
Um, Another key component of it is assume that the other person isn't trying to make you mad or do something that you told them not to. So, for example, going back to phone calls. Make an assumption that the advisor didn't wake up this morning and say, "Hey, look, I'm going to go into the shop. I'm going to make myself a pain in the butt. I'm going to find every way under the sun to screw up phone calls today." Most of the time, people don't do that type of thing. Um, yeah, and when you're in a leadership role, it seems like that's what they do. But at the end of the day, you yourself probably haven't actually ever done that. So it's just you start making mistakes throughout the day. And then you can drill it down to, okay, did the person actually get trained on how to do it? Usually that's where a lot of your problems end up coming out.
Yep.
I can't count the number of times that we started asking that question. It's like, oh, darn, we didn't actually teach them how. Like,
Yeah.
cool, maybe we wrote the process up, but when we hired them, we didn't specifically make so they understand it.
Mhm.
And then sometimes people just straight up don't have the desire to do it. But usually, people, if they're working for you, they have the desire to do what they're supposed to be doing. Usually, that's just being a training problem. And then, if they have the training and they don't have the desire, well, then they need to go find employment elsewhere where they can follow the processes of that business. So,
Yeah, no, that kind of nails it right on the head. And would you say like, are you one that's like quick, like slow to hire, fast to fire, that kind of model, or is it like no, you give that runway because there is that process. You want to see if they can learn, and if again as you hit those markers, then you're like, you know what, it's just not going to work out. We have to flip it. But what sort of style have you seen kind of work the most effectively?
yeah. So, don't lollygag in hiring. We can't do that in this job market.
Yep.
But at the same time, don't go too fast. Especially with roles outside of technicians. Typically, you can find the other roles a lot easier. So hire slow. Take your time. Technicians, you got to keep her moving.
Mhm.
Um, but as far as fire fast goes, I guess we also have to define what means fast.
Mm.
In delegating, I learned that you actually have to like use clear specific numbers. You can't just say like I want this done ASAP. Like ASAP means nothing. And like, anyways, to the guy that's leaving on vacation tomorrow, ASAP is 2 weeks from now when he gets back.
Yeah.
Whereas ASAP to me is like I want it done in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So um, defining what looks like to fire fast. So some people will hang on to employee for 6 months to a year after they started having problems. Well, I'm sorry, that's firing very, very slow.
Mhm.
So we end up looking at usually takes about a 30-day period where we'll address the issue. Hey, Mr. Technician, your hours for this month or last week were horrible. What's up? Then we go back and look, okay, so how were they for the month? And if we see, hey, he only did 100 hours last month and he was on the clock for 170, 180, it's like, all right, what's up? So you address it like, hey, are you just not finding enough work on your car or on your cars or what? And we'll have a kind of initial write up, nothing formal, document it so you know you had the conversation. And a high performer will typically pick up on that and they're like, hey, yeah, I've had to deal with X, Y, and Z at home, or this is going on in the shop. Usually within a week, they'll get it turned around. And then if they don't, you go revisit it the next week and actually do a write up on it, get them to sign off on it and everything, and then see where it goes. Typically, by the 80% of problems will get resolved inside of those first two steps. And then you just keep on going with it. And usually, after 3 or 4 weeks, on most problems, if they've not been able to resolve it, then it's time to go find their replacement. If yeah, it's time to go find their replacement. Sometimes it's a bit of a chess game, whether you let them go instantly or whether you go recruit someone else and then terminate the employee. So you have to play your cards right with that. But typically, most problems inside of 30 days, you're going to be able to get them resolved, especially with technicians. Sometimes advisors, if you're watching close ratios really, really tight, you're going to need to give the guys a 2 month runway to get things ironed out. But even at that, most of the time, those guys get it figured out inside of a week or two. So yeah, keep it moving, but yeah, don't do yeah, what's typical of like letting them go 6 months after the problem. If you feel bad about firing them, don't hesitate to give them a severance for a week or two of pay. Technicians in this environment, they can go find another job in like 2 days.
Mhm.
So, and their new employer will be happy to bring them on right away. So, no need to feel bad for that.
Yeah, no, perfect. I think you definitely shared a lot with us today. A lot of great knowledge, and obviously you're a great example for those that have that dream of creating multi shops. And it's not always simple, but I think leadership is at the root of a lot of it. If you have good leaders in place, it makes your life as an owner much easier, and allows you to get bored, so to say, and allow you to naturally grow and other dreams and endeavors that you have to accomplish. And as one last parting gift, I know you mentioned a bunch of books with us today. So if you could tell, for those of you that don't read, I was not a believer in reading business books or personal help books. That once you start reading one, I promise you it makes a world of a difference just with your mind. But if you could just give one book to the audience, like, you have to read this one, what would that one be?
Yeah. Definitely going to be extreme ownership. That's if you can grasp those concepts, the rest of it starts to fall in place. A close second, as I'd mentioned earlier, Think and Grow Rich. You pair those two together and then um, go with where things take you, keep on growing it, and you'll be absolutely amazed at where you end up at.
Yep, and that's my go-to book as well. I remember the first time I read that book, and I was like, holy moly, like it's just a whole different way of just taking, again, self-ownership of, like, you're not transferring blame anymore. It's like looking at problems and seeing, how is it my fault in terms of what could have been done better. Like, granted, yes, you can't control everything in life, but if you just look at it at a slightly different angle, I think it allows you to grow so much more as a leader and as a business. So again,
Absolutely.
Eric, for those that don't,
I got to plug. I got to a plug for Extreme Ownership is a very easy to listen to book. I actually recommend you listen to it rather than read it. The stories that he tells are worth listening to just straight up for story
yeah.
enjoyment purposes, more so than even what you learn out of it.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And especially if you are kind of a history buff, where you like hearing about like the like wars and things that are like battles and things, like they give me a good adrenaline rush as you're reading it too. You're like, oh, what is happening? Like, what's going to happen next? So yeah, that definitely great. But for those that are potentially looking to reach out to you, like, hey, Eric, I loved your story. I resonate with it a lot. I do have a few questions in terms of, like, maybe they have a horrible location too, and they're like, I wanted to try to move it to a better location. How did you do that in more detail? Like, what would be the best ways to reach out to you?
Probably two that work well are I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. So
Okay,
reach out to me on that and then we can set something up offline. Yeah, I'll talk to anybody about most things. So
perfect. All right. Well, Eric, again, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Kelsey of Left Autocare Marketing. We'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye.
thanks.